Welcome into the DGD Podcast. As always, Robert Reynolds got a special guest tonight. He's been on the show, but under a new brand now. SEC Unfiltered's founder, Chris Phillips. Man, how's it going?
Rob, what's up, man? Appreciate you having me on. Yeah, it feels good to hear you say that, and we're having a lot of fun, man, with the content. Talking little dogs today. Happy National Signing Day, by the way, to you and all the folks tuned in. But appreciate you having me on, man. It's a pleasure to chat with you.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to have you in, man. Been here multiple times now, so it's always fun to have you in. And it's weird because we're so used to talking South Carolina. Now we just open it up to SEC. I'm not even mad about it.
I look at it as it's just 14 times and soon to be 16 times the fun, man. It gives us that much more content, so it's a blast.
I'll counter that to say 15 because Vanderbilt. I mean.
Fair enough.
Unless you're hold on. Opening day.
I got love. Listen, I got love for Clark Lee and company. That Vandy football sent us a helmet and a football, and I'm hoping some other schools will do that. But
got it like that.
Yeah, we got some early love from the Commodores, so I got a bit of a soft spot for them. But you're right; it's about to be baseball season, which means it's Vandy season.
Boy, opening day, whew, man,
yeah,
oh man,
next Friday. Hard to believe.
No, that's crazy, man. I'm looking forward. Before we get into more stuff, but I'm ready to see what Charlie Condon does. I think he's primed for a good year. We'll leave it there.
He's going to be a star, man. I'm actually eyeing to share with you and the folks tuned in. I'm actually eyeing opening weekend. We may venture to Athens. I don't know if it'll be opening weekend, but at some point. But I'm pretty close to Athens these days, so I might slide down there and watch Charlie Condon and the boys on opening weekend.
Well, you do that, and you know the potent potables will flow. Simple as that. No, but I do want to bring that up to you, right? Let's talk some SEC stuff. Sanford Stadium 2024 beer sales will be for everyone now. I've said my piece. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm curious, real quick, Rob. Your piece in regard, are you pro or against? Is it positive or negative? I'm curious.
I see both sides, but I'm more for it. I think the revenue that comes from it. Yeah, I think the revenue will come from. And honestly, I think thinking economically, I say that.
Yeah.
There's always going to have the bad apples. Can't let that spoil the whole fun for everybody. But I would expect there to be a ton of sales. I mean, we've got home games this year. But at the same time, like if that moves forward, just imagine beer sales for everybody when you're playing or when you're hosting Oklahoma, you're hosting Texas for the first time, you're hosting Bama coming to town. Like all those matchups, man, especially just going to be nuts.
Well, it's going to be a great opportunity, Rob, I think, for NIL, right? I think you're seeing some others. I think Iowa State has a beer. South Carolina has a beer.
Georgia's got their own vodka.
They've got their own vodka. There you go. Even better, right? Even better. To your point about beer sales in the stadium, though, I'm not sure I thought that dog fans could get rowdier, but I think we're probably about to see that. But let's be fair, though, right? We're going to talk about bunches of people are going to be drinking in the stadium that weren't. They were drinking in the stadium, whether it was mini bottles, whether it was something else. But it brings a whole new meaning to who's that walking down the track, and the song goes, a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan, and it just brings new meaning to the song, So, no, listen, I mean, I think it's great. I think you should be able to go to a ball game and enjoy a beer, enjoy a drink if you want to, and I'm sure, again, they'll get creative with the NIL initiatives and stuff like that. But, I mean, I'm surprised it took Georgia this long. I mean, I feel like this is something we were talking about like 4 or 5 years ago that schools were doing, and so I think it's a good move. I think it makes sense. I know it's a college game, but adults go to the game, and if you want to enjoy a beverage, I think you should be able to.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I guess like the economics of being around college students and everything, it's going to be more security and all that. But to be fair, like you said, I mean, we've seen certain schools in the SEC, implement this, and it seems like some good success, right? Extra revenue coming in on game days and stuff like that, and it's not going to. It's not like it's going to hinder the game day environment in Athens as well. I mean,
I'm sure they're really concerned with underage drinking. If you go downtown Athens, there's none of that going on, right? No underage drinking ever happening in downtown or like no.
Chris, Athens, Clark County just got real randy here in that boy. Just can't help you there. That's just what happened. They heard that and they're like, "Oh,
Clark County PD stays busy, my friend. They stay busy."
Nah, Florida is not nowhere close to Georgia's biggest rival, man. I can't make that up. But no, I
And I'm
thought.
not trying to make enemies, by the way, with the dog folks because I got nothing but love for Georgia and everything. But it's all in
No,
good
it's
fun.
dude. The funny
But I
thing
was going to
is,
say it's all in good fun. I'm sure you
oh
saw
god,
all the responses to Carson Beck getting the what was it the Lambo he got or
yeah, the Lambo truck, man.
yeah, and it was there. I saw some folks with some great responses. That Clark County PD response, and it was like they had a souped up cop car. I
Nah,
mean, you gotta kind of laugh. You just gotta laugh it off. It is what it is. Like those jokes are gonna come forever.
Roscoe P. Coltrane coming out of retirement.
Right. So,
But no, it's
uh,
that which for what that's worth though, man. Like, welcome to the world of NIL, right? That's
yeah,
a full display. But listen, to be fair, my man came into college and earned that. Like, right? It's
I'd
legal.
rather see a guy like Carson Beck getting that type of deal. And I think people don't realize too, like Carson Beck didn't go spend 200 grand on a car. He didn't buy a
No,
car. It's
he
either
better at
being
least that.
Yeah, it's either being leased or they're providing him the car via some sort of deal or what have you. But I mean, he didn't go buy the car cash. But if there's going to be guys out there that get rewarded in that way, a guy like Carson Beck and those kind of players, I think it's well deserved, man. A guy that stuck around, he could have went somewhere else. You know, he didn't have to sit behind and wait his turn. He did. And oh, by the way, when he got his opportunity, I mean, I think he was one of the most underrated players, and it's hard to believe he was underrated, but I think he was underappreciated because I feel like Georgia, and I mean, I know you felt this, but Georgia all year last year it was never about, are you better than the opponent you're playing every Saturday? Are you the best team in the SEC East? Georgia was measured up against every single Saturday, week in, week out. Are you good enough to win 3 national championships in a row? And when you're measured against something of that magnitude weekly, you can't do enough. And so it seemed like everything Carson Beck did, really that entire Georgia team did, was swept under the rug. Georgia can't win by enough. They're supposed to win every game by 50. And all Carson Beck did was have one of the best seasons in Georgia history. And Mike Bobo obviously dialed it up as OC. So, I think Carson Beck, if you want to put 100 on him to win the Heisman in 24, I think that's as good a bet as any, to be honest with you.
No, you're not wrong there, man. I think it's very interesting as we welcome Keon in the building. Keon,
what's up, Keon?
What's going on? What's going on, guys? How y'all doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Glad of you to join us. No, so Chris,
I came in at the right time. I'm not gonna lie to you.
you talk about Carson Beck. It's a wrap.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. I definitely agree with you. So many people did try to sweep under the rug everything that Carson Beck did this year. I mean, you really look at his stats. I mean, he was completely balling from start to finish. Plus, when you really think about it, he was 187 yards away from breaking the single season passing yards.
So, was that Stetson set that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think about too what Mike Bobo did. I know there's a couple fan bases in the SEC, Auburn, South Carolina in particular, that like to rag Bobo. And I mean, we've all heard it, but I mean, Georgia, I believe, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but at least at some point in the season, I read that Georgia's highest points per game total, the last time it was higher or as high as it was this year, was 2014. And Mike Bobo was the OC. So
yeah, it was his last year as OC.
Right.
Yeah.
He knows how to dial it up, at least in Athens. You have to give him that. So, and I think Mike Bobo was one of the best OCs in the conference, if not the best. And
one of the things, Chris, and this is my opinion, if Keon, you want to speak on this too, I think with Bobo, he gets the bad rap, and it's the same thing with Will Muschamp, right? As you're a Gamecock fan for what it's worth, but the feelings of Muschamp as a head coach, it resonates through your fan base, right? It resonates through the Gamecock fan base. I get it. But as a coordinator, it's a whole different ballgame, right? I think over time, we've seen Mike Bobo and Will Muschamp, excellent offensive and defensive minds. Coordinators, excellent. Head coaches, not so much, and it's not for everybody. So when you go to a situation where you've got, I think what makes Bobo tick even better, in my opinion, than his first stint, Chris, Kirby's willingness to be a little bit more aggressive. I thought Rick was very conservative at times. That's one. Two, Chris, if I told you during his first stint from 07 to 14, the defensive coordinators that he worked with were Todd Grantham, Willie Martinez, and 1 year of Jeremy Pruitt, how would that make you feel?
See, it sounds like Mike Bobo was putting the team on his back. We'll put it that way. So,
well, I did it, dude. We did a show probably about 6 months to a year ago at this point when Bobo got hired, and the stats of the 2013 season for Georgia, dude, our defense gave up 29 points per game that season.
Yeah, they gave up everything.
Compare that to what Kirby's defenses are giving up right now, Chris, and this gives him the flexibility and I guess you can say more of the freedom to be more aggressive, at times, and it pays off. But we're also very efficient too. Carson this year, he blew me away with his care of the football. Very meticulated, did not turn the ball over much at all. And for a first-year starter, I think that is probably one of the more impressive things.
I think another impressive thing, even when you look at his interceptions, he had a total of 6. When you go back and look at it, out of the 6, 4 of those interceptions came off of a tip ball. So which means I'm throwing this directly to you. You're just not catching it. So I think that's something else to look at as well, especially when you look at the way how he battled back in the Auburn game. From that point on, you really saw Carson Beck begin to take a whole nother step. And from then, it just seemed as if Georgia was just completely steamrolling from that point forward. And to think that that same guy is coming back, plus you add Trevor Etienne to the offense, Brett Thorson, I'm sorry, you're going to be on the sidelines a lot this season.
Kendall Jenner, by the way, they can go on their date on the sideline. Okay, let him
I mean, now he'll have time. Shout out to Brett Thorson.
Basically like courtside seats, just, sideline view. But no, Chris, I want to ask you this, man. So obviously with signing day, Texas A&M arguably had the best day of all the SEC, keeping Terry Bussey. Listen, Georgia came in late with Dante Williams, but at the same time, obviously, I think it was a big threat from LSU. Want to get your thoughts on Terry Bussey. Me personally, I think, obviously a 5-star athlete. I think he's going to play on the defense at A&M. Listen, I think that is huge for Mike Elko, especially as a first-year head coach there. Considering his 2 years at Duke, the track record there for success is going to be a little bit more pressure on him. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, with Terry Bussey's situation, because I thought that was probably the biggest news of the day for signing day for sure.
And guys, to your point, by the way, I admittedly until about late yesterday forgot it was National Signing Day, because I think we'd all agree that the real signing day now is the one in December, and they really need to consolidate this signing day to one day, because I mean, what we have today, 99% of the guys are signed. That was the one big thing, right, with Terry Bussey, and then maybe Dominic McKinley with LSU and just making sure he was going to sign his paperwork. But that wasn't a whole lot of drama. Everybody else pretty much, was done. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot happening, but big win for Mike Elko early. You mentioned that was one you had to lock down with all the changeover, and I know they had a great portal haul. I think Mike Elko has actually done a really good job there thus far, but Bussey was that guy that was sort of the exclamation mark of your first signing class. And, obviously, man, you look at the tape, 5-star athlete, does it all. I think he's going to play defense as well. I think it'll be at defensive back, but I mean, they I heard somebody talking today, the wide receivers coach and the defensive backs coach are both recruiting this kid. So, look at a Travis Hunter at Colorado. It's always great to have a guy like that who can do a little bit of everything, and it's just a true weapon on a football field, right? It's an embarrassment of riches type of feeling. But, I mean, guys, that leads me to this too. We talked about the signing day and the recruiting calendar and the calendar for coaches. They got to figure this thing out, man, because I was told today, I didn't even realize the early signing day, or really what's National Signing Day now, that is going to fall on the Wednesday of the week of the first round of the college football playoff. So, like, imagine, and I know Georgia probably going to have a bye, but let's just say they didn't. You got a game on Saturday. You're trying to sign your class on Wednesday. I mean, it just makes no sense, man. I mean, it makes no sense. So,
Chris,
my bad. I just wanted to say real quick, I definitely get the complete frustration with that, because now you have coaches that are about to be running around like chickens with their head cut off, trying to balance out, okay, so are you locked in? Cool. Here's the game plan. Cool. Don't like this. Let me change this to the game plan. What do you mean that you're possibly looking other places? Like, It's too much stuff happening in such a short time
The
frame.
hardest part, Keon, the hardest part is coaches are constantly on the phone with agents of their current players.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of remedies or a lot of issues that could be fixed, and I think need to be fixed and addressed. We'll see. I think this joint committee, the advisory committee with the Big Ten and the SEC, I'm very intrigued to see how that transpires. I think it has potential if you can regulate it, but deep down, there's this feeling that like you're about to create this super conference, like the super, right? Like you're about to like succeed. But ultimately, listen, for what it's worth, they did mention that they do stand behind the NCAA. They just want to guide it to where things can get smoothed out. And if they can do that, I think Greg Sankey is the one commissioner of each conference in the NCAA, like the whole country. You have to look at Greg Sankey as the guy that can lead that charge. I mean, we saw it through COVID. There's no reason for me to believe that he can't address things in that manner to get us into a situation. I mean, what was it? The Boston College head coach that went to Green Bay basically literally said, "I'm tired of this shit.
Yeah,
I'm gone." And he was doing good at Boston College for what it's worth. That's the interesting thing. Like, Saban, I think Saban isn't going to fall into this as much. I think you're going to look at guys like potentially like down the road, if things don't get addressed and don't get fixed, you're going to look at Kirby Smart lasted nowhere near as long as Saban did. You're going to look at some key guys. I think Dabo, all these guys potentially could just walk away. Just walk away.
Yeah, I mean, I just think when it comes to that, I think the marriage affair between the SEC and the Big Ten, I think that really sets a big standard on the way on how they kind of want things to go moving forward. I mean, because you got to keep in mind, we're talking about the two biggest conferences, the two best conferences in this game. When you have them locking arms and understanding that, hey, this is how we want to really get things to go. You even had Greg Sankey. I don't know if y'all saw it today on Paul Feinbaum, but he had Greg Sankey on, and he even talked about, the different levels of adversity and just challenges and different things he had to overcome, even when it came being a commissioner during the pandemic, during the COVID crisis. And it really just shows that I think even between these two conferences, Sankey is definitely leading the charge and leading the board. But I do definitely agree. If things don't get better, things continue to go left field, you're going to see more prominent coaches leaving. I mean, Josh Pate even talked about that the other day on his podcast. Like, there's so many different things that are happening here, and there's so many. Even if you're looking at the NFL, I don't know if you're an NFL guy, if you have an NFL team, but I do, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm noticing that there's more and more younger coaches that are getting these head coaching spots, that are getting these OC roles, guys that are coming from college, and they're just tired of the nonsense.
Yeah, and I think to your point about with the SEC Big Ten coming together, and I'm not going to use the word alliance because that's a dirty word in college football since a couple years ago what happened with the ACC Big Ten stuff. But anyways, them coming together, I mean, I think number one, you make a great point. Greg Sankey is the best possible leader to lead the SEC into these, this new territory and these new ventures and lead, college football really into the future. But I mean, I think it's the beginning, no doubt. I think it's the beginning of the separation of the SEC, maybe the Big Ten along with them, a separation from the NCAA. I mean, we're seeing the Tennessee and Virginia versus the NCAA thing. We're seeing other stuff happening with the transfer portal. And it's like at some point where I think we're going to be asking ourselves, what role does the NCAA, at least for football, really serve? I mean, what are they doing other than being in the way of what college football is trying to do? Now, to the point of the coaches, I 110% agree with you. I think there's going to be guys, especially coaches that were in college football before the portal and NIL. I don't think you're ever going to fall out of love with coaching. You can fall out of love with the process, right? I said this about Nick Saban. I'd say it about many others. You never stop loving the end result. What you do stop loving is the process. You stop loving the work and the effort that it takes to get to that end result. And so a lot of these guys didn't sign up for the process, including having to re-recruit your own roster every single year, needed a $10 million salary cap to keep them intact, and having to go recruit the transfer portal and do high school recruiting and never basically take a day off. So, I mean, I will not be surprised at all if you see some guys bolt, if you see some guys hang it up, to echo what Josh Pate said, if you see some, fade into, the background for a couple of years and then reemerge when college football corrects itself. Because I think there's some guys out there. I think there's some younger coaches. I think maybe Kirby's one of them that, they love the hustle and bustle of this. Like, they can't get enough of it, man. They love waking up at 5 a.m. and getting to the facility and staying there till 10 at night. And that's great. And a lot of guys love that. Some guys don't. Some guys just want to coach ball. They have a wife. They have kids. They want to spend time with family. And, I mean, they just don't want to have to deal, like you mentioned, with the nonsense or the headache. So I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis. I don't think we can, we can sit here and certainly speculate, but it can be somewhat difficult to predict who's going to bolt. But I think you'd be naive to think that this isn't going to affect other coaches, and we won't see more of this in the near future of coaches jumping to the NFL, or maybe even just taking a step back entirely.
Yeah,
no, I'm with you there, man. I think, for what it's worth, though, I do want to kind of ask your opinion on this. With it being signing day, now that the 2024 class is done, right? I would say it's pretty much nail in the coffin. From your thoughts, who are obviously I look at Georgia as being a winner, right? Just in this case, but I want to look at your winners. Who surprised you? What were your initial thoughts from some of these SEC programs? If I'm not mistaken, I think On3 had 6 SEC programs in the top 10. I don't think that should surprise anybody here that's at least keeps up with SEC football. But from your perspective, let's hear. I want to hear your thoughts on the National Signing Day around the SEC. Who were some winners? Who were some losers? What stood out to you?
And guys, I've gotten to the point when it comes to the recruiting rankings, I don't even really look at the national recruiting rankings anymore, because you can be 14th in the SEC but be 25th overall nationally. So it's almost like the national rating is like this ego stroke, right? Like, man, we had another top 20 class. It's like, yeah, but you finished 12th in the league. Are you making any progress? Are you really ascending as a program? And like, that's not to tell the schools that finish 12 through 16 that like you have no chance. But typically the schools that are finishing bottom half, they're in the bottom half, and the ones finishing top half are in the top half, right? The teams with the best players win the most games. So when you talk about winners and losers from the 2024 signing class, I mean, obviously you mentioned, man, Georgia, Alabama, you got to start there. I thought Georgia, both those schools, I thought did a great job addressing their needs, getting high-end talent. I mean, you look at the classes and just the overall ratings, and it speaks for itself, right? We talked today on my show about, which freshman is most set to be a breakout star and a household name by season's end. It's really fun going through Georgia and Alabama's recruiting classes, because it's kind of like just take your pick, right? I mean, I don't think any of those guys would be a bad bet. I thought Hugh Freeze at Auburn did a good job addressing needs, adding Cam Coleman at wide receiver. I thought that was huge. I thought Kalen DeBoer did a good job. I know I just talked Alabama, but Bama's situation is a little bit different. To finish as highly as they did, to hold on to Ryan Williams, get him to sign, for Kalen DeBoer to establish that relationship so early on in his tenure and get him back, I mean, that was obviously huge. I thought LSU and Brian Kelly did a good job. Losers, I mean, I think you have to start with the Florida Gators, man. I mean, Florida, and I'm sure you guys are shedding a tear hearing that, but I mean, Florida was a team, top 5 recruiting class, and you get to signing day and they puked all over themselves. There's no other way to put it. There's just, blue chip Billy turned into Sunbelt Billy overnight when it came to signing day, unfortunately, for the Gators. So, and then you lose Trevor Etienne as well. So, I mean, they're struggling, they're suffering. It's I know dog fans are having a fun time with it, but I mean, you got to look at Florida was a big loser. You mentioned Texas A&M. I think because of holding on to Bussey, I think they were winners, obviously, and they did most of their work in the transfer portal. And see, that's the interesting thing too, man. Is like you look at Mizzou down, and I'm looking at the SEC ratings on 24/7. You look at Mizzou at 10, Ole Miss at 11. Those classes aren't flashy necessarily. I mean, they're still good players, right? I mean, Ole Miss,
good ones. Oh yeah,
right. But the transfer portal is where they did a lot of their work, especially Ole Miss, right? So it's like overall, I think when we talk about signing day and signing classes, I think we have to include the portal in that conversation, because if you only talk about the high school prospects and the high school signings, it's only half of the convo, right? So Ole Miss were winners. I think South Carolina was somewhat winners from the standpoint of I think they addressed their needs. I'm not sure they got major
Dylan Stewart, right?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not sure they got major star power in the class outside of Dylan Stewart, but I think when you sign a lot of guys in the trenches, when you sign a bunch of offensive linemen, and Georgia knows this too, and it's fun to look at like the size of those guys, right? The Dogs signed some absolute beasts, but it doesn't pop quite as much because they're big uglies, right? They don't get the credit necessarily. It's not flat. We're not going to go watch the highlight tape of the offensive line
until it becomes a problem.
Until it becomes a problem, right? So I mean that was a big win, I thought, for South Carolina, the way they addressed their needs there. I mean, I thought Arkansas was a loser. You look at them, 15th in the SEC, and I mean it's just Chris, I know they got they got Taylon Green from Boise State, but I wonder Sam Pittman. I know his tenure there in Fayetteville's on life support. So there were tons of winners and losers, man. But I mean, I think with recruiting, listen, I'm somebody I call it as I see it, right? I'm not employed by 24/7 or On3 or Rivals. I don't have to spin it and tell you that every 3-star is a diamond in the rough or that every walk-on is going to be the next Rudy. So listen, if you're down there, the bottom third of the league, you better make sure your coaching staff can develop the heck out of some guys because you're going to have to, because the rest of the teams in the SEC, they got Jimmys and Joes that are going to perform. So,
yeah, I definitely agree in a lot of instances, especially when you're looking at really just the recruiting classes. I do think in a lot of cases you do have to start putting the recruiting classes along with the transfer portal together and then using that as a grade, because you can be third just off of being on the trail when it comes to bringing in high school recruits, but you're first in the conference for being in the portal. Are you still 3 or are you at least 2 if not 1? You see what I'm saying? So, and I just think when it comes to that, those players are going to mesh. So I think it's best, like, moving forward. And of course, the likelihood of them taking this and actually doing it, slim to none. But I do think like that would be very beneficial when it comes to breaking everything down, because it's not like they're going to 2 different teams, right? Like,
and to your point, Keon, it's really, the question I think we're asking is, who did the best job at talent acquisition this offseason? I mean, that's no matter how you got them, portal, signing, who did the best job at talent acquisition? I think Georgia, Bama are the obvious answers, but like I'd go Ole Miss. I mean, I think when you look at the SEC
who
they signed, that's what I'm saying. Like when you look at the proven SEC stars they signed, it's hard to argue anybody other,
because that's instant. Right. That's instant playmaking ability.
The biggest thing from there is just making sure guys gel. That'll be the big question for Ole Miss. Yeah. Do all these pieces from all these schools come together and gel? That's probably the question for like a Trevor Etienne. Hey, how does he match? Although that's just one player. But I mean, whenever you bring those portal guys in, it's like, hey, let's make sure they buy into our culture, right? They're going to fit in. They're going to fit into the system. They're going to buy in, whatever. But I mean, when you just look purely talent on paper, what Lane Kiffin and company did, it's really hard.
It's nuts. Yeah. Absolutely. Chris, I want to bring this point up to you. Yeah. You made your point about basically the conference and comparing it nationally. If I told you 12 out of the top 25 was SEC, but 26th was also SEC, and that was Mississippi State at 26. So, yeah, your point is proven.
I mean, it's I mean, that's why I say, man, like when I look at the recruiting rankings, and maybe I should have realized this a long time ago, but I had this epiphany like over last couple months where it's just like I always found myself looking at the top 25, and I'm like, what is the point in doing that? Like, what? It doesn't matter if you're 20th, if you're 14th.
Look at your conference rankings.
Like, I mean, that's just the reality of it. So, I mean, listen, man, it's about Jimmys and Joes, and I always tell people this: if you're somebody listening and you're wanting to go deep dive on recruiting or whatever, and you'll hear a lot of people say stars don't matter. The only people that say stars don't matter are fans of schools that stink at recruiting. Prove me wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, right? And the teams with the highest rated stars, best players, they win the most games. It's just proven. It's statistically proven. You can love it. You can hate it. You can discard that info. But at the end of the day, blue chip ratio is a thing for a reason. And now the portal plays a role. But you typically know going into a season what type of ball club you got.
Facts. Chris, For those that are interested on finding your work, us at SEC Unfiltered and beyond, where can they find your work, buddy?
Yeah, so SEC Unfiltered, man, we're on social media, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your content, we are there. We drop daily content on YouTube, SEC Unfiltered on YouTube. We actually dropped a piece today talking about Kirk Herbstreit recruiting against the Georgia Bulldogs, and a lot of Georgia fans were chiming in on that. And that was my piece of content because we got a couple folks that do video work, and I just don't understand what Kirk Herbstreit's got against Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. So highly encourage all the Georgia folks to check that out. And then, of course, the podcast drops iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll go live occasionally if it's breaking news, or we're going to start going live like every Sunday during baseball season to recap the weekend. We're going to be doing a bunch of stuff when SEC tournament comes up, all that good stuff. So, again, everywhere you get your content, SEC Unfiltered is there. And I'm on social media, CPhilly19, where you can find a lot of my takes as well.
So just, guys, if you're listening or if you're watching, not just football over there at SEC Unfiltered. They hit year-round just like we do.
Football, baseball, basketball, and SECUnfiltered.com, by the way. I want to plug the website because we love the website. We'll have merch coming soon, but we got a great team of contributors that we're building out right now. We've got written content, video, audio, social media, everything in between. So, and like I mentioned, man, for anybody listening who wants to give SECU a warm welcome, I'm pretty sure next weekend we'll be there for opening weekend, maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday, but one of those days. Want to go check out Charlie Condon and what the Dogs have this year. So you're probably going to be next weekend. If the weather cooperates, Foley Field, calling my name.
True. You're going to be at Media Days next year? I think it's going to be in Dallas.
Yeah, so I was there last year in Nashville. The plan is to be there yet again in Dallas. So that's that is the game plan. That is the game plan. Yeah,
Chris, that's his stomping grounds, by the way.
Yeah, okay. Hopefully I'll see you there.
Yeah, that is the game plan, man. So let's do it. Let's get up in Dallas.
Chris, man, Chris, thanks again for coming on, buddy. It's always a pleasure to have you on. You're more than welcome anytime.
No, I appreciate you guys, man. Great for the opportunity. Keon, Rob, y'all are great, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
Appreciate you.